Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. I'm looking today at the White Book again. There it is. That's volume 1. It says volume 1 on the front, very heavy. Then volume 2. There we go, and then there's the spine. And I've also got to go with that an important additional book that comes with it, which is Costs and Funding Following the Civil Justice Reforms. It's questions and answers. It's now in a 9th edition, and this one comes with the 2023 White Book service. Let me just show you the White Book in case you haven't seen it. Most people have seen it and they know what it looks like. It's a very heavy book. It's available as a paper book and is also available, of course, online. Now, what you have useful dives calendars at the back of volume 1, and at the front you have a list of all the relevant rules, so a very quick guide to the relevant CPR rules. Then you've got the shading areas to see what you might be looking for, because it depends very much on what you're looking for as to what part of the book you're looking at, because it's 6,000 odd pages long. A very detailed index in both volumes right at the back, which goes on for a very long time, and you can see, even as I flick through, that the index itself, when I get to it, the pages are, you've got to be careful because the pages are actually quite thin. You've got what you do have is just before the index. You can see here, it's called the glossary. I'm going to hold it up. The glossary, that's just immediately before the index. Then you've got the legal index. And because this is a publication from Sweet and Maxwell, Thomson Reuters, you're talking about a legal taxonomy, which actually sets out how they actually set out the index and how you use it. And you'll be used to that if you have any Sweet and Maxwell, Thomson Reuters books. Then if we go I'm looking at the shaded areas, which you can see here. Right at the back is the index bit there. Then you've got this bit here, which is actually the pre-action protocols. Now, again, quite often with pre-action protocols, a lot of the work I now do concerning any advice to clients is to remind them about the pre-action protocols, which are there. They start there. You can find them, of course, online, because this is an online service as well as a book service. And obviously, pre-action conduct and protocols, very important today. Often something most people forget all about. Obviously, solicitors don't, but lay clients do. Then you've got the bulk of the CPR rules there. And you can find whatever you want. Let's see if we can find something really interesting to bore the living daylights out of you. Let's have a look and see. Appeals, there we go. Part 52, CPR Part 52 appeals. You can see the structure. You've got a lot of detail. You've got all sorts of subheadings on things like procedure, what sort of things you do. Lots of case law throughout. Lots of comments as well. To go with any particular rule or part of a rule, there's a comment, and that, of course, is absolutely fundamental. If you're just looking at the civil procedure rules as a whole, you don't get that. And that comment, you can see just even there, that commentary itself is very valuable indeed, because that's what we actually argue about in court. Going to the front of the book, let me just show you the front. There's the volume 1. Then you've got the list of editors. I haven't mentioned the editors yet, because there are a lot of them. The editor-in-chief is the Right Honourable Lord Justice Peter Coulson, and he's a Lord Justice of Appeal. And under him, there's an emeritus editor, Professor Scott, and then the general editors are two people. One is Senior Master Fontaine, who I believe is now retired, and you've got Dr. J. Sorobji, John Sorobji, who is a barrister, and he's done a lot of work, and he's the editor also of the Civil Procedure News, which is just over there. I haven't got it with me. It's a little book, a little paper newsletter which tells me some of the up-to-date information. Then you've got a whole range of editors right at the bottom. You can probably see a few of them mentioned. I can't mention them all by name because there are just so many of them. You can see a large number. of people who are involved. Then there are advisory editors, and then after that you've got a preface. And the preface is always worth reading with the White Book because you get an idea of what's been happening. I'm going to talk briefly about it in a few minutes. I'm not going to say too much. The preface was written in February 2023. I'm recording this at the beginning of the year, but the preface itself is important because it tells you the new things in it. Then you've got the table of contents. Then it runs through all the way from there with the civil procedure rules and all the other stuff. That is volume 1. Now volume 2 goes on from there. There's volume 2. Again, very heavy again. Again, you've got calendar at the back. You've also got at the front the CPR rule numbers, which is very helpful. Then you've got a lot of shaded areas, excuse me, which you can see. Now, can I say a word of warning here? Because what you've got is you've got a whole range of different sets of advice, if you like, procedural advice. You can see that's about the administrative court. And can I just say that quite a lot of the information is actually in the White Book, the paper version, but there's also quite a lot now which is online only. So you may need to have a look online for some things. I'm just looking at the first part, which is on administrative courts. Then the Senior Court Costs Office regime is set out in a great deal. It's actually a guide. Then you've got practice directions on the business and property courts, and you've got guides with all the courts. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see it's very detailed with all of the different shaded areas. And what you've got, for instance, here with this shaded area is the Housing Act. That's the Housing Act of 1988. And you've got obviously quite a lot of legislation. And again, you do have, even with things like the Housing Act, you've got again something very useful. Like Halsbury statutes, you've got the basic information, then you've got commentary on it, which assists very much in advising from the case law what has been happening. And I think a lot of people who are new to the White Book probably won't know too much about that. Then you've got a whole range of other areas. I'm not going to go through too much detail because we'd be here all night otherwise. And finally, the costs funding. Now, I've been using this recently because this is case and cost management. Now, most of us will be involved at some stage with case and cost management hearings, and this will give you some information, if necessary, about some of the issues that are currently being raised. The one that I have a lot of problems with sometimes is proportionality. That is covered very well in this new edition. This is the 2023 edition. You've also got a very useful statement on QOCs, qualified one-way costs shifting, which is important again for PI work, apart from other things. Then you've got a lot of information about fixed costs. This book is important, to know about. It just depends very much on what you're doing, because with all the stuff we have here, you're dealing very much with something that will be specific to the particular area of work that you are involved in, or the specific arguments that you're putting forward to a judge because you're making a submission about a particular issue and want the judge to go in a certain way. So you do need to know your way around these books in detail. And even now, I still have a lot of difficulty. And I come from a period when we had the White Book and the Green Book before they were all merged together. So you can appreciate that I'm delighted that we've got it all in one book, or one series of books. But even then, it's very complex. So what do we say in brief terms? It's the most durable and detailed of all the civil practitioner titles in changing legal times. And I say that because I've got a blurb which is about the White Book, which basically says, well, the Civil Court Practice 2023, which is what I'm looking at the moment, or known as the White Book. It's actually a service that's given to us, and it offers the most comprehensive service for civil practitioners in all matters relating to their practice. And it's a fundamental purchase for anybody who's a civil practitioner working in areas where patterns are continually changing with the way in which we do our business, our processes and everything else. And obviously the White Book is relied on by judges and lawyers more than any other legal text and is trusted for what is in it. Now, can I just say there are other versions of the Civil Procedure Rules available. This is the version you have to use. It's expensive. Obviously, you will be able to get access to the White Book basically online in the law libraries. You can also get access to the White Book in court. And there is some information available, of course, online, which you can print out from the government website. But what the White Book does is it contains the sources of law relating to the practice and procedures of the High Court, the County Court, when it handles civil litigation, and is therefore means it's courts which are subject to the Civil Procedure Rules, the CPR. And the sources, of course, which we have here, are supplemented by substantial and comprehensive expert commentary by a huge number of people who are involved. And I thank all of them, without naming them, for what they do, because this is a very, very difficult task to amend anything, as I know from the work I do on the Red Book, which is just for family work. But the White Book itself is incredibly a complex piece of, if you like, a statement on practice about how we go about doing things. And what we've got for the White Book 2023 is the latest amendments made to the CPR, which brings the book up to date. And we get also things like Civil Procedure News, which John Sorogyi produces, and a lot of other stuff, which keeps us as up to date as we can be. Because what we've got now with both the White Book, the Red Book, and other books is you've got the paper version, which many judges still like, but you've also got an online version as well. And the online version is very helpful because you can print things out, you can find things, and of course you haven't got to lug these huge books around all the time. Obviously the supplements are extremely important because the publication, like Halsbury for instance, is regularly updated. Things have changed so much in the 30 odd years I've been in practice, and I see a big change coming, and I'm going to mention this now, and that is that the way we're doing our business is changing, and I foresee a time where certainly we're getting to that now, where any form of skeleton argument and any form of substantial detail will have linked into that document, which is sent to the court, links to the White Book, which means that you're going to need to have access not just to the paper version, but to an online version if you can. We haven't quite got there yet, but I think that is probably for the next 3 or 4 years, and that means that we will be looking again at how we actually do things in the future. As I said, do have a look at the preface, which explains what the changes are, because what you've got with Volume 1 are the core materials needed for practicing in the civil courts, including the pre-action protocols, which I mentioned. Volume 2 then contains more specialist material, again looking at the court guides, legislation, rights of audience, ADR, and so forth. And as I said, you get in addition to that the costs and funding publication, which is extremely helpful too. Now, can I say finally that the White Book is actually published normally every May, around about that sort of time. And obviously, therefore, you're looking between, say, the beginning of this year and up to May to getting as much information as possible in it for the paper version. But you then have to now look to see what is happening online as well. And I found the online version helpful, but again, it's a different way of dealing with how you deal with your business as counsel or as a solicitor. I have found a very large number of solicitors don't actually have the White Book, and they rely more on counsel to have a copy. But my own feeling is that we are now moving very far forward quite quickly to linking the online versions of these practice publications with the work which we need to do, certainly as counsel in contentious litigation, so that the judge can get to things very quickly. One last point is, the question then is, will we be getting access, and will the judge be getting access to cases? because the ideal would be if you are producing a skeleton argument, you will use the white book for the practice bits, the CPR, and you then will need possibly to refer to a specific section, say, of a piece of legislation. I had to do one recently involving a particular area of law, when in fact we were looking at very specific sections of an Act of Parliament. Now you should be able to click into that to get all that information put into your skeleton, and likewise the same thing should happen with cases. I don't know how far we've gone on that, because the problem will then be, what case reference do you link in, and how do you actually get the judge to look at the particular case? Because at the moment I am actually taking an extract from a particular case and putting it in my skeleton argument, but in the future I'm going to have a link which the judge will be able to click and go straight on his computer or her computer to the relevant case law, the relevant section, or wherever it might be. Now that, I think, is the future, and can I say, I know that the authors of this publication and of things like the Red Book and other publications are always happy to hear from practitioners if you've got anything to offer about how we move forward with these particular publications. Because as I've said before, this is 2023, 2024. I'm looking ahead now to probably the next 3 to 4 years, where I think there's going to be a big change in the way we do our business again. So on that cheerful note, I'd like to thank everybody for producing this book. I'd like to thank you for listening to what I've had to say about it, because I think we're on the cusp of big changes, and keep up to date is the message. And a thank you to all. Bye-bye.